The world can end on a piece of paper small enough to be hidden in a clenched fist. I didn't know that then. I was too busy being the perfect wife, the flawless hostess. The brunch was my stage and I was performing my heart out. When my son Leo slipped that tiny crumpled ball into my hand, his eyes wide with a fear I hadn't seen since he was a little boy, I almost brushed him off. Later, honey, I thought. But something in his expression, a silent, desperate plea, made me retreat to the pantry. I unfurled the paper. The words, scribbled in his messy handwriting, were a jolt to my system. Your tea. Don't drink it. 5 words. That's all it was. I stared at them, my mind scrambling for context. Was this some bizarre teenage joke? A prank? I looked at him, confused, and he just gave a frantic, almost imperceptible shake of his head, his gaze begging me to believe him without question. It was only hours later, when the facade of our perfect life had shattered into a million sharp pieces, that I understood why. But before we get to that, let me set the scene of the beautiful prison I called home. My name is Clara. 2 years ago, I married Daniel, a charismatic and successful investment broker. After my first marriage crumbled, leaving me a single mother to Leo, Daniel was a safe harbor. He was charming, stable, and he seemed to genuinely care for my then 12-year-old son. We lived in a beautiful modern house in a gated community in San Diego. From the outside, it was a picture of success. A sleek car in the driveway, a manicured lawn, a life without financial worry. Leo, now 14, had always been a quiet, observant kid. He was more comfortable with a sketchbook than a soccer ball. His relationship with Daniel was polite. They coexisted, but there was a distance I chalked up to typical teenage adjustment. I thought we had found a balance. I was wrong. That Saturday morning was dedicated to Daniel's most important clients. The air was thick with the scent of fresh coffee, baked brioche, and my own anxiety. I had been planning this brunch for a week. Everything needed to be perfect. I was arranging canapes on a slate platter when Leo appeared in the kitchen doorway. His face was pale, his knuckles white as he gripped the door frame. "Mom," he whispered. Can you come look at my laptop? It's acting weird." Before I could answer, Daniel strode in, radiating confidence in a crisp linen shirt. "What's the holdup, team?" he asked, his voice a smooth baritone that usually calmed me. Today it set my teeth on edge. "Nothing, darling," I said, the lie coming automatically. "Leo's just having a computer issue. I'll be quick." Daniel's smile was tight. "Make it very quick, Clara. The Thompsons will be here in 15 minutes, and I need you by my side." His eyes, the color of sea glass, swept over me, and for a fleeting second, I saw not affection but appraisal. I followed Leo down the hall to his room. As soon as the door clicked shut, he shoved the crumpled note into my hand. My heart hammered against my ribs as I read it. "Leo, what is this?" I asked, my voice a hushed, strained thing. "This isn't funny. We have a house full of people coming." "It's not a joke," he hissed, his eyes darting towards the door. "Please, Mom. You have to believe me. Don't drink the tea he makes for you. Just don't." The desperation in his voice was a physical force. It was the same tone he'd used when he was 6 and had a nightmare, convinced a monster lived in his closet. But this was no childish fear. Footsteps echoed in the hall. The doorknob turned. Daniel filled the doorway. "The Thompsons are early," he announced, his gaze sharp, moving from my face to Leo's and back again. "Is everything all right in here?" On an impulse I can only describe as maternal instinct, I brought a hand to my temple. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I suddenly have a splitting headache. I think it's the stress." He studied me, his head tilted. "A headache? Now, Clara? You were fine 5 minutes ago." "I know," I said, leaning against Leo's desk for effect. "It came out of nowhere. You should start without me. I just need to lie down for a moment." I saw the calculation in his eyes. Annoyance warred with the need to maintain his perfect host image. The doorbell chimed again, more insistently this time. "Fine," he conceded, though the word was tight. But don't be long. He left, closing the door a little too firmly. The moment we were alone, Leo grabbed my arm. You're not lying down. We're leaving. Now, tell him you need to go to the drugstore for migraine medicine. I'm coming with you. Leo, this is insane. I can't just abandon. Mom, he cut me off, his voice breaking. This is your life. Please. His words, your life, hung in the air, cold and heavy. They didn't sound like a dramatic exaggeration. They sounded like a fact. Swallowing my confusion and a rising tide of fear, I grabbed my purse and car keys. We found Daniel in the living room, already laughing with the Thompson couple. Daniel, I interrupted, forcing a pained smile. My head is getting worse. I'm going to run to the pharmacy. Leo's coming to drive me. I added the last part quickly, seeing the protest form on his lips. His smile was a masterpiece of concerned husbandry. Of course, darling. Don't rush. We'll manage. He turned back to his guests. My wife, the perfectionist, worked herself too hard. His performance was flawless. But as I turned to leave, I caught his eyes over Mr. Thompson's shoulder. For a split second, the warmth was gone, replaced by something cold and assessing. It was a look I'd never seen before, and it sent a shiver straight to my soul. The car doors slammed shut, locking out the world of polished silver and false smiles. Inside the car it was just us, the hum of the engine, and a silence so loud it was deafening. Drive, Mom, Leo urged, his body tense as he stared out the passenger window, watching our house recede in the rearview mirror. Just drive. I'll explain. I pulled out of our cul-de-sac and onto the main road, my hands gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. Okay, Leo, I said, my voice trembling. I'm listening. What is going on? He took a deep, shuddering breath, as if steeling himself to jump from a great height. Daniel, he's not who you think he is. I heard him last night. On the phone. My heart stuttered. Heard what? He was in his office. It was late. He thought I was asleep. Leo's words started tumbling out, fast and frantic. He said, it's all set for tomorrow. Clara will have her usual chamomile tea to calm her nerves during the brunch. It will look like a sudden cardiac event. You guaranteed it. I slammed on the brakes at a red light, my body going cold. Leo, that's a terrible thing to say. The denial was my first automatic defense. You must have misunderstood. Maybe it was a business metaphor. Something about a merger. A hostile takeover. He laughed, Mom. Leo's voice cracked with emotion. After he said it, he laughed. Like it was a good joke. The light turned green. The car behind us honked. I accelerated mechanically, driving without seeing. He was talking about the life insurance, Leo continued, his voice dropping to a horrified whisper. The big one he made you get 6 months ago. He said with you gone, he'd be clear. And, he hesitated, his face pale. And then he said he'd deal with the Leo situation afterward. A wave of nausea so violent hit me I had to pull over to the shoulder. I put the car in park and stared at my son, truly seeing the terror in his eyes for the first time. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was my child, telling me my husband had plotted my murder. My God! I breathed, the world tilting on its axis. There's more, Leo said, pulling out his phone. This morning after I heard him, I went into his office. I found these. He showed me photos of financial documents, bank statements from institutions I didn't recognize, spreadsheets filled with red numbers. He's broke, Mom. Or almost. His company is drowning in debt. He swiped to another picture. And he's been moving money. Your money. From the sale of Nana's house. I took the phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely read the screen. It was all there. Regular transfers from our joint account, an account largely funded by my inheritance, into a separate private account under Daniel's name alone. The numbers were staggering. The perfect life was a lie. The stability was a sham. The man I loved was a viper I had invited into my bed. The pieces clicked into a horrifying mosaic. The insistence on the life insurance policy. His growing irritation when I talked about financial planning for Leo's college fund. The way he gently discouraged me from going back to work teaching, saying he loved taking care of us. I had been so blind. So stupid. Leo, I whispered, a new chilling fear cutting through my shock. These documents, did you take them? I took photos and put everything back exactly how I found it, he said, but he didn't sound convinced. And neither was I. Daniel was meticulous. He would notice if a paper was a millimeter out of place. My phone vibrated on the console. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. Where are you? The Wilsons just arrived and are asking for you. The normalcy of the text was more terrifying than any threat. He was playing his part, waiting for me to walk back into the trap. We need to call the police, I said, grabbing the phone. And say what? Leo challenged, his youthful face grim with a practicality I lacked. That my stepdad was talking on the phone about killing you? That we have photos of his bank statements? He'll say I'm a troubled kid making up stories. He'll say you're hysterical. He was right. We had a bombshell, but no proof that would detonate in a police station. It was our word against his. A respected businessman against a newlywed wife and her moody teenage son. Another text from Daniel. Hope you're feeling better. I made you that special chamomile blend you like. It's waiting for you when you get back. The weapon. A cold, hard clarity settled over me. The initial terror was hardening into a fierce, protective rage. He had threatened my child. He had planned to kill me. He would not get away with this. We need proof, I stated, my voice suddenly steady. Real tangible proof. Like the poison itself. Leo stared at me. How? We can't go back there. We have to, I said, making a U-turn that pressed us back into our seats. It's the only way. We'll keep up the act. You go to your room, say you're not feeling well either. While I distract Daniel and the guests, you search his office. Look for the bottle, anything suspicious. If you find something, take a picture but don't touch it. If you feel scared, text me the word apple, and we're out of there. The plan was reckless, a high-stakes gamble with our lives. But the alternative, running forever, looking over our shoulders with Daniel painting me as an unstable runaway, was unthinkable. As we approached the house, my heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I was walking back into the lion's den, but this time I knew the lion was real. The house was a bubble of curated elegance, the murmur of polite conversation and clinking glasses a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. Daniel was holding court by the fireplace, a glass of champagne in hand, the picture of success. His eyes found us the moment we entered. The smile he offered was warm, concerned. Ah, you're back. Feeling better, my love? A little, I lied, forcing a weak smile. The medicine helped. He turned to Leo. And you, champ? You look pale. Headache, Leo mumbled, perfectly playing his part. I'm gonna go lie down. Of course, Daniel said, his hand patting Leo's shoulder in a gesture that now felt possessive, not paternal. Rest up. As Leo disappeared upstairs, Daniel guided me into the crowd, his arm a heavy, unwelcome weight around my waist. Everyone was so worried. He murmured into my ear, his breath warm. I fought the urge to shudder. I moved through the guests on autopilot, my smile a fixed mask. Every time Daniel looked at me, I saw the predator beneath the polish. Every laugh he let out sounded hollow and cruel. I checked my phone obsessively. No message from Leo. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then a vibration. A single word lit up the screen. Apple. My blood ran cold. He was in danger or he'd found something. Either way, we had to go now. Excuse me, I said to the group, my voice tight. I just need to check on Leo. I didn't wait for Daniel's response. I moved quickly, taking the stairs 2 at a time. I found Leo in his room, his face ashen. He was coming up the stairs, he whispered, pulling me inside. I just made it in. I found it, Mom. He showed me his phone. A clear photo of a small amber glass bottle with an eyedropper top, hidden in a hollowed-out book in Daniel's desk. It had no label. "We have to go," I said, pulling him toward the door. It was then we heard the footsteps, deliberate and heavy, stopping right outside. The doorknob turned, but the door didn't open. Instead, we heard the distinct, chilling sound of a key turning in the lock. Daniel had locked us in. Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through me. We were trapped. "The window," I hissed, rushing to it. It was a 15-foot drop to the patio below. Dangerous but not impossible. "We can't," Leo said, his voice pitching high with fear. "We have to." I grabbed the heavy wool blanket from his bed and began tying one end to the leg of his solid oak desk. It wouldn't reach the ground, but it would shorten the fall. "Mom, he's coming back," Leo whispered, pointing at the door. I could hear his footsteps returning. Quicker this time. "Go," I ordered, helping Leo climb out. He shimmied down the blanket, hanging from the end for a heart-stopping second before letting go. He landed on the patio with a grunt, rolling as he hit the ground. He looked up and gave a shaky thumbs up. There was no time. I grabbed the blanket just as the door unlocked and swung open. Daniel stood there, his face a mask of cold fury. In his hand was a single mug steaming gently. The chamomile tea. "Clara," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "What are you doing?" Without a second thought, I launched myself out the window, sliding down the blanket so fast it burned my palms. I let go, falling the last few feet and landing hard on my side. A jolt of pain shot through my ankle. "Run!" I screamed at Leo, scrambling to my feet. I glanced up. Daniel was at the window, his face contorted, the mug still in his hand. For a terrifying moment I thought he would throw it at us. Instead, he disappeared back into the room. "He's coming down the stairs," I yelled. We sprinted across the backyard, vaulting over the low fence into the neighbor's yard, and kept running. We didn't stop until we were 3 blocks away, hidden in the alley behind a convenience store, gasping for air, our hearts trying to beat their way out of our chests. We had escaped, but we were far from safe. Huddled in the back of a taxi, heading to a crowded shopping mall as a temporary sanctuary, Leo showed me everything. The photo of the bottle. Another photo of a handwritten note he'd found tucked inside the book with the bottle. It was a timeline in Daniel's precise handwriting. 10 o'clock guests arrive. 11:30 serve Clara her tea. 11:45. Effects begin 15 to 20 minutes. 12:05. Discover her. Call 911. Cardiac arrest. Untraceable. Seeing it written down, so cold and clinical, broke the last remnant of denial in my heart. This was real. At the mall, I called the only person I could trust. My old friend Maya, a defense attorney who had never liked Daniel. While we waited for her, Daniel's texts flooded my phone, each one a masterpiece of manipulation. "Clara, where are you? I'm sick with worry. Please, if this is about our argument last night, we can talk. I love you. I'm calling the police. I'm so scared for you and Leo." He was building his narrative, painting me as the unstable wife, the irrational mother. And then the final chilling text: "The police are here. They found something in Leo's room, Clara. What did you do?" He was planting evidence, framing me. Maya arrived, a whirlwind of competence and fury. She listened to our story, examined Leo's photos, and immediately drove us to the police precinct. "We're filing a report first," she stated. "We're not letting him control this story." At the precinct, the officers were initially skeptical, just as Leo had predicted. They had already spoken to a distraught Daniel. But Maya was a force of nature, presenting the photos, the timeline, our statements with razor-sharp precision. The tide began to turn when a forensic officer walked in and handed a report to the desk sergeant. They had conducted a preliminary sweep of our house. The sergeant, a weary-looking man named Captain Miller, read it and looked up at us. Mr. Mendoza reported what appeared to be bloodstains in the minor's room. He expressed fear that the mother may have harmed the child. Leo let out a strangled sound. "That's a lie." Captain Miller's gaze was steady. The preliminary analysis confirms the substance is blood, less than 2 hours old. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in before delivering the hammer blow. However, the blood type does not match you or your son, Mrs. Mendoza. It matches your husband's. We also found a vial of his blood and a syringe hidden in his gym bag. Daniel hadn't just planted evidence. He had done it sloppily, arrogantly. Just then, the man himself arrived, his face the perfect picture of relief and concern. Clara! Leo! Thank God you're safe. He moved to hug Leo, who flinched back as if burned. The confrontation that followed was like watching a slow-motion explosion. Maya presented our evidence. The captain confronted Daniel with the forensic discrepancies. Daniel's facade began to crack, his explanations becoming more convoluted. When the captain mentioned the vial of his own blood, Daniel's composure shattered. This is a setup. She's framing me, he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at me. And then the final piece fell into place. Another officer entered, holding the amber bottle from the photo, now sealed in an evidence bag. Preliminary field test is positive for digitalis, Captain, a plant-based toxin that causes cardiac arrest. That was the end of the performance. Daniel's face transformed. The concern melted away, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. The man I had married vanished, and the stranger underneath was revealed. You stupid sentimental fool, he snarled at me, his voice dripping with contempt. You ruined everything. That money was mine. You were nothing without me. A boring teacher with a pathetic brat. The officers moved to restrain him as he spewed venom, confessing to the financial fraud, the plot, his utter loathing for us. They were the truest words he had ever spoken to me. As they led him away in handcuffs, the silence he left behind was deafening. The trial was long and painful. The evidence was overwhelming. The poison, the financial records, the testimony about his crumbling business and massive debts. He was sentenced to 25 years for attempted murder, with additional time for fraud and filing a false report. Leo and I moved to a small town north of San Diego, in a rented house with a view of the mountains. It's quiet. It's real. Today I'm unpacking the last box in my new home office. I'm going back to teaching in the fall. As I lift a stack of books, a small folded square of paper flutters to the floor. I know what it is before I even pick it up. I keep it in a small trinket box on my dresser. I unfold it carefully, the paper soft from being handled. Your tea. Don't drink it. 5 words that changed everything. 5 words that saved my life. Leo is in the kitchen making dinner. He's taller now, more confident. The shadow in his eyes has faded, replaced by a hard-won light. We still have bad days, but we have them together. Mom? You okay? He calls out. I look at the note one last time, then fold it and tuck it safely away. It's not a reminder of the fear anymore. It's a reminder of our strength. I'm perfect, I say, walking into the kitchen and wrapping my arms around my son, my hero. We both are. This response is AI generated for reference only. Continue writing chapters up to 10. Here are chapters 5 through 10. Continuing the story of Clara and Leo. The weeks following Daniel's arrest were a blur of legal proceedings, police interviews, and a slow, painful awakening. The perfect life Clara had built was a house of cards, and it had not just fallen, it had been torched. They stayed with Maya, who became their fierce protector. Clara's first independent act was to hire a forensic accountant, paid for with the last of her personal savings, an account Daniel had never known about. The findings were even more devastating than she had imagined. Daniel had not just been siphoning money. He had taken out multiple lines of credit and second mortgages against their house using forged signatures. The comfortable life they led was funded by debt, a pyramid scheme waiting to collapse on her head. Leo retreated into a shell. He slept with a baseball bat by his bed and jumped at slamming car doors. The bravado he'd shown during the crisis had evaporated, leaving a raw, traumatized boy. Clara enrolled them both in therapy, a decision that felt as crucial as hiring a lawyer. One afternoon, Captain Miller visited them at Maya's apartment. His demeanor was grim. "We've been digging deeper into Daniel's past," he said, placing a file on the coffee table. "There was a fiancée before you, Clara. A woman named Isabel. She died in a hiking accident 8 years ago. Fell from a cliff. No witnesses." Clara's blood ran cold. "Was she insured?" "A substantial policy," Miller confirmed, "which Daniel collected. The case was closed as a tragic accident. But given his methods, we've requested an exhumation order." The world seemed to tilt again. Clara wasn't his first target. She was just the next in line. The realization that her love, her trust, had been nothing more than a stepping stone in a long-term murderous financial plan was a poison in itself, seeping into her memories and turning them all foul. Meanwhile, the media got hold of the story. "Sociopath broker's poison plot," screamed the headlines. Clara and Leo were portrayed as lucky survivors, but the scrutiny was invasive and relentless. They were prisoners of their own story. The exhumation of Isabel's body provided the chilling confirmation they needed. Traces of a powerful sedative were found in her tissue samples, a drug that could cause dizziness and disorientation. Daniel hadn't pushed her. He had simply ensured she was in no state to keep her footing on a precarious trail. Faced with this new, incontrovertible evidence from a second potential murder, Daniel's legal team began to fracture. A plea deal was floated, a full confession to the plots against Clara and Isabel, in exchange for taking the death penalty off the table. Maya advised Clara to agree. "A trial would be brutal for you and Leo. This way he admits everything. He goes away for life, no parole. You get closure without having to relive every detail on the stand." The day of the plea hearing, Clara forced herself to go. She needed to see him one last time, to watch him publicly acknowledge his crimes. Daniel stood in the courtroom, thinner, his expensive veneer completely gone, replaced by a sullen resignation. When the judge asked him how he pleaded to the attempted murder of Clara Mendoza and the murder of Isabel Vance, his guilty was a flat, emotionless sound. It was over. Legally, at least. As he was led away, he didn't look at her. She was already part of his past, a failed business transaction. With the criminal case concluded, the civil battles began. Clara worked with her lawyer to untangle the financial mess Daniel had created. The house was sold to pay off the massive debts. The life insurance policy was canceled. But from the wreckage, a small victory emerged. The offshore accounts Daniel had so carefully stocked with her money were traced and frozen. After a lengthy process, a portion of it, enough to give them a fresh start, was returned to her. It wasn't about the money. It was about reclaiming a piece of what was stolen. It was about agency. With the returned funds, Clara made a down payment on a small, modest house in a quiet, unassuming neighborhood a few hours north. It had a small garden and a room with good light for Leo to draw. It was theirs free and clear. Leo, inspired by his own therapist, began to channel his experience into art. He started a graphic novel about a boy who discovers a supervillain living in his own home. Not with lasers, but with lies. The act of creating gave him a sense of control over a narrative that had once controlled him. Clara, meanwhile, faced the daunting task of rebuilding her career. Her years away from teaching felt like a lifetime. She reached out to old colleagues and began applying for substitute teaching positions, taking it one day at a time. The simplicity of the work, lesson plans, grading papers, was a balm. It was real, tangible, and honest. They established new rituals. Friday night was pizza and a movie. Sunday morning was for hiking in the nearby hills, a conscious reclaiming of the outdoors from the shadow of Isabel's fate. They talked more than they ever had, about their fears, their hopes, the mundane details of their days. The silence between them was no longer heavy with unspeakable truths. Nearly a year after their escape, Clara felt they were finally finding their footing. She had secured a full-time teaching position for the upcoming fall semester. Leo was making a few friends at his new school. The past, however, had one last ghost to offer. Clara was cleaning out an old email account, One she hadn't used since before Daniel, when she found it. A single, unread email from an address she didn't recognize, sent over a year ago, around the time Daniel had insisted on the life insurance. The subject line was, "A warning." With trembling hands she opened it. "Miss Clara, you don't know me. My name is Robert Vance. Isabel was my sister. I tried to warn the authorities about Daniel after she died, but he was too clever, too charming. I have no proof, only a gut feeling that he is a dangerous man. I saw your engagement announcement in the society pages. Please be careful. Ask him about the hike in Big Sur. See if his story changes. I pray I am wrong." Clara sat back, stunned. Someone had tried to warn her. A brother's intuition, ignored by the world, had landed in an inbox she never checked. She had been so swept up in Daniel's whirlwind romance that she had missed it. She spent the evening researching Robert Vance and found an obituary for him. He had passed away from cancer 6 months after sending that email. The finality of it was heartbreaking. He had died thinking he'd failed to protect another woman from the man who killed his sister. She printed the email and placed it in the trinket box with Leo's note. It was another artifact from the war, a testament to the quiet voices of warning that are so often drowned out. She made a silent promise to herself, and to Robert's memory, to never again dismiss that small, insistent voice inside her. The new school year began. Walking into the teacher's lounge on her first day, Clara felt a wave of anxiety. She was no longer just Clara the teacher, she was Clara the woman from the news. But to her relief, her new colleagues treated her with a respectful normalcy. The principal, a kind-eyed woman, simply said, "We're glad to have you, Clara. Your students are lucky." Meanwhile, Leo started his sophomore year. The graphic novel he was working on had gained a small following online, giving him a community and an identity separate from the trauma. He even started dating a girl from his art class, a quiet, thoughtful girl named Jasmine who knew nothing of his past and liked him for his sketches and dry sense of humor. One evening, Leo came to Clara, looking troubled. "Jasmine's parents are having a big anniversary party. She asked me to go." "That's great, honey," Clara said, but she could see the anxiety in his eyes. "It's at a country club. Fancy. Like Daniel's parties." He looked down at his hands. "I don't want to go back into a room like that." Clara's heart ached for him. The triggers were everywhere. "You don't have to go," she said softly. "But I want to," he insisted. "For her. I don't know if I can." This was a new kind of battle, not for their lives but for their right to a normal life. They spent the evening role-playing, practicing small talk, and agreeing on a secret signal Leo could use if he felt overwhelmed and needed to leave. The night of the party, Clara waited up. When Leo came home, he looked tired, but there was a new confidence in his posture. "It was okay," he reported. "A little stuffy, but I did it. I used the signal once. We went for a walk and then we went back in. No one knew. It was a victory, small and profound." He had faced the ghost of his old life and had not let it win. A year and a half after the note, on a bright autumn Saturday, Clara and Leo were planting bulbs in their small garden, hoping for a burst of color in the spring. Their hands were dirty, the sun was warm, and they were laughing about a silly joke Leo's therapist had told him. Clara sat back on her heels, looking at their house, their garden, her son's smiling face. The scars were still there. She still double-checked the locks at night. Leo still sometimes woke from nightmares. But the scars were no longer open wounds. They were reminders of their resilience. That night, after Leo had gone to bed, Clara took out the trinket box. She looked at the 2 pieces of paper inside. Leo's frantic scribble and Robert Vance's desperate email. They were not just reminders of danger, but of salvation. One from the love of her son, the other from the love of a stranger for his sister. She closed the box. She didn't need to look at them as often anymore. The lessons were now a part of her. Trust the instincts. Listen to the quiet warnings. Value the true, simple love of family. She walked to Leo's door and peeked in. He was asleep, his sketchbook open on his chest. On the page was a drawing of the two of them, standing in their new garden superhero capes flowing dramatically in the wind. Clara smiled. They weren't just survivors. They were architects of a new life, built not on a foundation of sand and lies, but on the hard, unshakable ground of truth and mutual survival. The past was a shadow, but it no longer darkened their door. They had faced the monster, and they had, together, chosen to live in the light.